Okay, in this mini lesson, we're only going to work on the log area, and so I have sort of zeroed in on just this part of the painting. I want to talk to you for just a second before we start painting. We can imagine that these are old fence posts that haven't been planted, let's say, or logs of some kind. They're laying out in the field, and the top parts of them are covered with snow, which means that's just the white of the paper. But the under parts of them are still the brownish color of the log or the post itself. And so we just have to think for a minute what we're going to paint and what we are not going to paint. To start off, we're going to outline where the log is just by painting the underside. When we have to be careful. For example, this log that's leaning up across two or three logs here, two logs, is at an angle. We need to leave the top part of this log white of the paper, but we are going to define the bottom of the log and the end of the log. So let me show you how to do that. We're going to take our number round with the point. We're going to dip into some brown. Let's go ahead and make our puddle. And I like still to have a little blue. This is going to be more brown than blue. It's going to be but I want it to be a darker brown. So you can see I've got that color in there. And I'll just start with this log right here, and I'm going to just do the underside of that, like that. When I get to the end, I am going to round it up so that I know I've got a post. Now, I got too much paint on this brush. I'm going to have to take some of that out. I'll fix that with some grass, but like so. Now I got to be careful. Here's one here. We're going to have to decide when we paint and when we don't. I got too much paint on in my brush the last time. I want a smaller line. That's better. And so I'm going to outline where this log is, and I'm about a half of a circle. You know, it's in the snow, so I don't want it to be totally out of the snow. Obviously, we've got this line coming across here, and we can get a little bit more paint in there to get it up halfway on the log. I'm at the end. I'm going to do a little bit of a half circle there, like so. This is beginning to dry now, so I'll come here, and I got to be careful here because I don't want to paint into my snow. So you'll notice I'm drawing a line up just a little bit right here, so that I say, oh yeah, I'm highlighting where it is snow. Got to do the same thing with this log here. Got to make sure that I'm not cutting into that snow area. I can come under. This log goes under the other one. Get a little paint in there. It's in the snow. Half a turn there, and finally this log up here. And it comes out the other side. Being careful not to get it up onto that snow. Now, isn't this interesting? Just by painting the dark side of those posts, I've begun to outline them, and they're really popping into shape, and you can see that there's snow on top, and just by what I didn't paint. Now, the next way we're going to highlight this is going to be so interesting, I think, and that's the way we do it with grass. So we're going to let that dry just a second. While we're doing that, I'm going to tell you something else to do, and then as soon as that is dry, we'll come back into it. We're going to be using our toothpick to create grass and some other lines, and this is a colored toothpick, and if you can get just the plain brown, you know, unstained or colored ones, that's probably better. But you know, it probably has some sort of a coating on it so that the toothpick doesn't get soft. And so what I generally do is I take that off, or at least rough it up with a piece of sandpaper so that it's more likely to take on water, right? And so that's just all I'm doing right there. Getting some of that stain off of there. And now this toothpick is more likely to soak up some water, so that if I take this and I move it around on my paper here, I'll do it down here where you can see, I think, I can create strokes. In fact, one of the things we'll do is we'll begin to create the fence wire just with the toothpick. And I'm doing this while that paint dries on that log. I got to be careful. I don't want to get too thick a line there. I don't care if I get a little bit of these artifacts in there. You can imagine now how you can do this with just going straight on up the fence row and creating this wire line. To get a little bit more water in there. And I generally put 3 wires to a fence post. You could put 2, it doesn't matter. This one is a little low, but that's okay. Going to come around here on this one. We'll come back to that in a minute. This is now set up so that I can show you something. I'm going to take a piece of tape, and in this case, the top of this log, I want to protect that snow area, so I'm going to put this tape like this. Now, I need to know where the log ends, so I'm going to put a little pencil mark. And then I've got to be careful about this part of this little piece of log right here that has the snow on it. I don't want to touch that. But I can take my brush like this, dip it in water. Let's get it with some paint on it here. Yeah, I'm doing this sort of off camera, I know that, but I just want to test your brush so that you know that you're getting those soft strokes. And now very carefully I'm going to put in some grass that is going to come down to that tape, and I can paint over that tape. But I got to be careful that I don't paint into that snow part of that log. Now I'm going to lift this up, and now that log's even more defined with a nice clean edge by those grasses, right? I can do the same thing if I wanted to with this part of the log. And I know I've got to have some grass right here. I can make it go up on in front of that other log, that's okay. But what I'm doing is I'm really defining that edge so that when I pull that off, you see that. So we're just going down along these, and I have to make sure that the paint is dry. So if I'm working there and I need to give it a minute, I'll just go ahead and work in another area around this, darkening some of these grass clumps around these fence posts that are already in place. Again, what color you use doesn't have to be straight brown. Now I can have some grass in front of this log and just barely clip up into the white that is the snow on top. But be careful when you do that, that you still let where the snow is be defined by that straight line at the edge. Now I'm coming on the back side of here. I got to be very careful. If I do that, I don't want to cut into that log there, so that's why I need to put this piece of tape over here and help create a straight line that's going to be there. Now you can see what I'm doing, and you can go ahead and finish this particular technique on out. The last thing I'll tell you to do on these logs is to take your number 4 round. Let me get that one is my worn number 4. Let me get my clean number 4 here. And I'm going to go into some blue like we've done before, make a nice little soft wash, and I'm carefully going to then put some shadow line on the back sides of these logs like so. And that really kind of helps to anchor them onto the snow. Right. I've even sometimes touched the very, after this is dry, just the very back edge of these logs to create even shadow on the logs. Like that. Now those logs are beginning to set down on the ground. That's what the advantage of having these shadow lines is about. See, I'm just touching that in there with some of that blue, and that snow has that cast of blue under there because the light is not hitting it. Okay? Make sure you keep your boards protected. I want to do one last little part on this area here. You're going to put some tape on here, but right on that edge, if we can finish out with getting that edge defined, I think it'll be looking pretty good. I'll put a little piece of tape there. Get my brown and blue going here. Whatever color, maybe I add a little green to it, I don't know. Kind of get my colors going here while I get it something good enough. And I'm going to come up on the edge of that. That's good. I'll come up here. And now that log is stepping out. Now I can come in here. If I want to have some grass in between these logs, I can do that. Cutting up into that snow. But at least you get the illusion that there are logs or posts now out there on the ground, on the snow. I see this is bled in a little bit more here. So all I'm doing is taking that brush and wicking that paint back out with a damp brush that I keep wiping on, sometimes I wipe it on my fingers, but wiping on a Kleenex. So what you're going to do now is finish the log area, finish out the post, and when we come back, we'll do what I call final touch-ups, and we'll sign the painting and call it complete.